A president's helicopter just falls out of the sky. The official story is that it was a tragic accident. But what if it wasn't? We're going to look at a pretty stunning analysis from Professor Jiang Xueqin, who uses game theory to ask a chilling question. Was this really an accident, or was this a brilliantly executed coup?
So let's start with the facts, what we know for sure. On May 19th, the helicopter carrying President Ebrahim Raisi went down. We're talking about a remote, super mountainous part of Iran. Everyone on board, all 9 people, including the president and his foreign minister, they were all killed.
Now, the official story from Tehran came out fast. They said it was dense fog, just really bad weather that caused the crash. And you know what? That's entirely possible. But with an event this big, you absolutely have to look at it from every single angle.
And that is exactly what analyst Professor Jiang Xueqin does. He brings in game theory, which is really just a smart way of looking at a situation and figuring out what people might do based on their own self-interest. It lets him cut through all the noise and ask the single most important question you can ask in a situation like this: cui bono? Who benefits from Raisi's death? And the answer, well, it points to a very, very powerful group inside Iran.
All right, so let's get into the specifics of that day. President Raisi was flying back from opening a new dam right on the border with Azerbaijan. His convoy had 3 helicopters. But for some reason, only his, an old American-made Bell 212 from back in the 70s, only his helicopter went down.
So Professor Jiang's analysis gives us 3 main theories, 3 competing possibilities for what happened. And to figure this out, we have to treat each one seriously and just weigh the logic behind them.
Okay, so theory number 1 is that it was just a simple accident. And this is highly plausible. I mean, Iran's planes and helicopters are ancient because of sanctions, and the weather really was awful. Theory 2, a foreign adversary, like the US or Israel, took him out. This one's considered pretty unlikely. It's incredibly difficult to pull off, and the motive isn't really clear. And that leaves us with theory number 3, an internal enemy, an inside job. The opportunity was there, and that makes this a really chilling and plausible theory that we've got to dig into.
And if you want to know why that foreign adversary theory seems so weak, just think back to the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani in 2020. With Soleimani, the US had a crystal clear motive. They saw him as a direct threat who was directing attacks on their troops. And they had the opportunity. They got him in Baghdad, not deep inside Iran's borders. With Raisi, what's the motive for an outside power? And how would they even do it? It just doesn't add up in the same way.
So if we park the foreign adversary theory for a minute, we're left with that most fascinating possibility: an inside job. And to even begin to understand that, we have to talk about the most powerful organization in Iran, a group that's basically a state within a state. We're talking about the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. Now, these guys are not the regular Iranian army. The regular army protects the country's borders. The IRGC's job is to protect the Islamic Revolution itself. They are, for all intents and purposes, the supreme leader's private army. Their loyalty isn't to the country, it's to him and the ideology of the revolution.
But here's the thing, the IRGC's power isn't just about guns and soldiers. It is profoundly economic. Over the years, they have built up this massive financial empire. Professor Jiang's analysis points to estimates that the IRGC controls anywhere from 10% to, get this, a staggering 50% of Iran's entire economy. Think about that. It's a monopoly on power and wealth that has choked the country and made a lot of people furious.
And they cemented that power in blood. They really became the dominant force during the Iran-Iraq War in the 80s. But since then, their main job at home has been to crush anyone who speaks out. The student protests in '99, the Green Movement in 2009, the massive women-led protests in 2023. Every time, the IRGC has been the regime's iron fist, and they've just gotten more and more powerful with every crackdown.
Which brings us right to the heart of this whole thing. If the IRGC is already so incredibly powerful, why on earth would they want the president dead? Well, according to this analysis, the answer has nothing to do with the present. It's all about the future. And who gets to be the next supreme leader?
Just think about it for a second. The current supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, he's 85 years old. A change is coming, one way or another. And President Raisi wasn't just the president. Everybody saw him as the hand-picked successor. And that, right there, was a direct threat to the IRGC's long-term survival.
Okay, so here's the 5-step logic according to the analysis. Step 1. Raisi was the heir apparent, no question. Step 2. Any new, independent supreme leader would have to build his own team, his own power base, which means taking power away from the IRGC. Step 3.
With Raisi out of the picture, who's next in line? The Ayatollah's son, Mojtaba. Step 4. Mojtaba is incredibly unpopular. A lot of Iranians see him as totally illegitimate. The only way he could ever take power and keep it is with the IRGC's muscle, which basically makes him their puppet. And that leads to Step 5, the big payoff. The IRGC gets to keep its political and economic empire safe for another generation.
And Professor Jiang puts it very bluntly. A new leader needs his own guys. For Raisi to become the new Ayatollah and actually have power, he would have had to start chipping away at the IRGC's enormous influence. So for the IRGC, Raisi becoming the next leader, that wasn't just a change in management, it was an existential threat.
So look, if this theory is right, if this helicopter crash was actually a quiet coup by the IRGC, then the analysis says we should start to see some real tangible changes in how Iran acts on the world stage. It's not going to be business as usual.
So what should we be looking for? Well, Professor Jiang's analysis gives us a checklist. First, keep an eye on that presidential election. Does an IRGC insider end up winning? Second, listen to the words coming out of Tehran. Does the rhetoric get way more extreme, more aggressive? Then watch their foreign policy. Do their proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthis, suddenly get more funding, more encouragement to stir up trouble? And maybe the biggest tell of all, watch their nuclear program. Any sudden rush to build a bomb would be a massive signal.
But, and this is a really important but, Professor Jiang is very clear about this. Even if we see all of these things happen, it does not prove the IRGC killed Raisi. Correlation isn't causation. But if these things don't happen, if Iran's policies actually stay pretty moderate, well, that would seriously poke a hole in the whole internal coup theory.
So in the end, this whole analysis leaves us with one final powerful question. Maybe the upcoming election in Iran isn't the real story at all. The real question this theory makes us ask is whether a military deep state just pulled off a silent takeover and whether Iran's next president will actually be a leader or just a face for the country's true rulers.